He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It is time for Inside Coverage, where we go through every single game from Sunday. And I can't imagine where we're going to start. Could it be the World Series? We know the Dodgers are headed on to take on the Yankees. Feels like a heck of a matchup. Could be the WNBA champions, a 28, 26-year route for the Liberty broke. No. It's the other New York team that we're talking about, the New York Football Jets, who on Sunday night had all of the attention because last Monday they lost on Monday Night Football, which resulted in a mega trade that shook the entire NFL on Tuesday when they acquired Davante Adams. Davante makes this Jets debut tonight, but let's be real, Frank, this didn't go the way Jets fans hoped. The Jets still take the L. Pittsburgh gets a big win where, frankly, all of a sudden everything clicked for the Steelers, and the Jets offense still looked inept and lost.
You know, and I hate to bring this to the 10,000-foot view right away, but there's a reason the Jets are the Jets and they have the longest playoff drought in American sports. There's a reason the Steelers are the Steelers and they don't have losing seasons under Mike Tomlin. And you can kind of see that all encapsulated tonight or even within the past week. Let's say that. Because the Jets, they go to 2-4. What do? They trade a third-round pick for an aging receiver. Okay, great, good for you. And then they come out and they look like the same old Jets, sloppy and bad. I don't believe they scored in the second half. Just a team that has not been right all season. And instead of recognizing that, they just keep throwing assets at the problem, thinking it's going to turn around. They're just digging this deeper and deeper. It's a bad football team. I don't know how they're this bad. I really don't. It's like, when you looked on paper on this at this team in the offseason, I talked about this in the offseason. I was very high in the Jets. Obviously wrong. But I looked at that roster. I said, this depth chart is so good. It might be the most talented roster in the NFL. They just need average quarterback play. And Aaron Rodgers has not been that bad. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad. He's been all right. Fine. But they're getting so little out of their talent this year. And it's not a bunch of major injuries or anything like the 49ers. This is just a bad football team. I'm at a loss to really explain how the Jets are this bad. They got boat raced by the Steelers tonight. Russell Wilson, basically hasn't played well in years, but hasn't played period this year. Comes in and looks like Seattle Russ, right? Like and a lot of that has to do with the Jets just being terrible.
For me, I'm going to double down on what I said when the trade happened. The reason I loved Amari Cooper to the Bills compared to Davante Adams to the Jets is that the Bills had a glaring need. To me, the Jets had what was supposed to be a wide receiver one, just weren't utilizing them. So, sure, you get more weapons, but what belief should we have that you'll utilize those weapons to the fullest? And what did we see today? I mean, if the conversation was going to be Davante, I think let's have some realistic expectations. He's only been there a few days. But in the second half, they didn't really dial up anything that was made to get the ball to Davante just to see what happens. And then when they tried to get the ball into Garrett Wilson, it still looked lost. There's timing issues, there's connection issues, there's communication issues. All of these things that we saw when Garrett Wilson was wide receiver one was supposedly going to be fixed by making him 1B. It feels out of sync. Maybe Bryce Hall ran the ball a little better. I was impressed that the Jets offensive line kept Aaron Rodgers upright for the majority of the game. I thought that was a good effort by them. But the story of this game, I think you're right, is frankly, Russ came in and the Steelers looked re-energized. Their offense looked easier. Everything had better rhythm. It's like all of a sudden I looked at that and said, this makes sense. I didn't say that for the Jets. I am saying that for the Steelers because their line played better. The run game was stronger. I think the broadcast made a strong point that as much as we thought of Justin Fields as being a huge part of the running game, maybe having a more viable threat as a passer creates a better running game by nature. That we saw that tonight.
Absolutely. And you got to give Mike Tomlin a ton of credit. This is why Tomlin is the great coach he is. This is why he's probably going to the Hall of Fame someday. He has a Hall of Fame resume if you look at it. Look, I scoffed at it. I think you did too. Kind of this whole idea of like, he was just going to play Russ. Like he just had his mindset since like March. I'm going to play Russ. And it just seemed like he was being really stubborn with this. And even this week, I think it was Jay Glazer who said, like, Mike Tomlin told him, I just went Lone Ranger on this. This was my call. I wanted to do this. And he kind of just like, what's Tomlin thinking? Like, we've seen Russ the past couple of years. We saw him in the preseason. Russ doesn't have anything left. Well, this is why Mike Tomlin's a great coach. This was the right button to push. Russ looked good. Like, yeah, he started slow, but he hadn't played in 6 weeks. Like, it's understandable why he started a little slow. Once he got going, he's throwing balls up to George Pickens, who's making great contested catches. He's spreading the ball around. The whole offense, like you said, kind of flows through that. Even the running game gets going. This was a different Steelers offense. This was the best Steelers offensive performance we've seen. And again, I just go back to Mike Tomlin making a move that wasn't easy. This would have been so easy for him to just say, we're winning with Justin Fields. We're just going to stick with the status quo because we're winning. When he saw it, he said, Justin has done his job filling in for Russ, but he's deficient in the passing game, and we need more out of that. So we need to turn to Russ, who still has something left. I believe in this guy. And he was right. And again, to go back to just who these franchises are, who they are, the Jets push every wrong button. Like every wrong, like you could give them one choice and somehow they're going to screw it up, right? Like it's just like, it's over and over and over with the Jets. This is why the Jets are who they are. And this is why the Steelers are who they are, because Mike Tomlin does push the right buttons. Even we don't think it's the right button. We're like, oh, yeah, okay, Mike, I guess we should have had more trust in you that you were going to get this quarterback thing right.
I feel like they showed the Tomlinisms, and I've had the chance to work with a couple of guys that played for the Steelers in their life, and I've heard this one a million times. I say it all the time. The standard is the standard. Also, how you do anything is how you do everything. But the standard is the standard is one of Mike Tomlin's biggest sayings. I felt like what we saw tonight was that from both teams. The standard of the Steelers was the standard tonight, and you see it. And the standard of the Jets was the standard tonight. And you see it. This is who the Jets are. And, frankly, the Jets defense was supposed to be a juggernaut. Well, what did we see tonight? We saw an undrafted rookie free agent for the Steelers get 2 picks off of Aaron Rodgers in this game. And on the other side, Sauce Gardner got beat on a pass interference that shouldn't have gotten beat on. Like, it just felt to me like at some point, even the strengths of the Jets don't really feel like strengths. And what should be weaknesses for the Steelers are strengths in this game, because the standard is the standard for how these teams operate.
Yeah. And going back to the Jets, it's like, it'd be easier if it was just one thing. If it was like, you could point to it and say, it's just Aaron Rodgers stinks because he's 40 years old and he's coming off Achilles. Okay, cool. No, that's not the case. Or if like the defense has 14 injuries on the line or whatever. Okay, but that's not the case. It's just it's death by a million cuts. It's everything is kind of this weird version of itself. Like Garrett Wilson, who's a good player, really good player, has a pass literally bounce off of his chest and get intercepted. It was a key turning point in the game. Russell Wilson has a quarterback sneak on the next play to give them a touchdown off of that. Like what? Like everything is disjointed with the Jets, and everything is just the Steelers do all the little things right. They block a field goal instead of getting it blocked. It was really good. So it's just these things over and over again, and it's not coincidence that the Jets always screw these things up and the Steelers always get them right.
The next game for the Jets is the Patriots. I would presume that's a get-right game for them. We all think the Patriots are terrible. I would presume that's a get-right game, but let's not get it twisted. At this point right now, as we sit today, the Jets are 3 games back in their division already. The Bills are 5-2. The Jets are 2-5. They are 3 games back in their division.
The Jets would have to go what? The Jets have to go 8-2 the rest of the way to make the playoffs? Does that look like a team that could go 8-2? Does that team look like a team that can go 5-5? Like, no, this is a lost season, and then it all gets blown up in the offseason, I assume.
That's the wild part of it. And, I take no joy in watching fan bases be miserable. We all know, if you've listened to this show or my content at all, that I'm a miserable fan. I take no joy in watching fan bases be miserable. I think the part of this Jets conversation that we need to learn from is that we anointed this team because we loved a quarterback so much as a brand, that it was like, hey, Aaron Rodgers will come in and it will make everything great. And we didn't question, many people didn't question so many of the decisions that have happened since then. And now I'm looking at a Jets team that seems lost, that is not utilizing the weapons they have, that has gone all in. They are pot committed to right now. And the right now expectation is not going to be a Super Bowl. This is not a Super Bowl caliber football team, which means all of this was basically for nothing. And that is a sinking feeling, whether you're talking about the Jets or anybody else. Let's just pick up the rest of the Sunday action, Frank, and we do it from Detroit, where it was wild. Detroit was absolutely... Yeah, I watched this game, and I told you a couple of days ago, here's what we knew. We knew we were going to get a prove-it moment. Could the Vikings manage to put yet another superstar quarterback in a blender? Were we going to get an MVP moment from Jared Goff? And by God, we got 2 badass football teams playing badass football game. I want to see that game every single Sunday. I don't even know if I got the big takeaway, Frank. My big takeaway from this was both of these teams are fully capable of winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't come out of this game thinking any less of the Vikings. I thought they played well, but the Lions are legit. Like, the Lions are really, really good. Look, we don't know how the defense is going to be the rest of the season, especially with the Aiden Hutchinson injury, and they did give up some points here today, but when the chips were down, they got the stop they needed, and Jared Goff led the Lions to game-winning field goal. Just an unbelievable game. Just really, really entertaining from Dan Campbell's fake punt on the first drive of the game. Like, by the way, Dan, nobody's fooled anymore. You don't have any element of surprise. We all know you're going to fake at least once a game, it seems. So just leave your offense out there.
If you're going to fake the first one, don't be a coward. Fake the second one. Nobody will see that one coming. I don't care if you're on your 10-yard line. Fine, just do it. You already did it once. Do it twice. Now you're making them think the rest of the game.
There's so much to break down this game, but I'm going to start by I don't think I can take a victory lap yet on my Jared Goff for MVP summer, but boy, is he playing well. Against Brian Flores has confused C.J. Stroud, Brock Purdy, any quarterback that they've faced. Like you said, they've put in a blender, have looked terrible. In this game, Jared Goff, 22 of 25, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 140 rating. Jared Goff is going to get in this MVP conversation right now. Like this is a thing that's happening because I think the Lions proved today they're one of the best teams in the NFL, without a doubt. To go on the road and beat that Vikings team after a lot went against you, you're down 10-zip early in the game, partially because of that fake punt. You have David Montgomery gets the ball peanut punched out, fumble return for a touchdown. You're losing late in the game. You have to punt late in the game because you take a sack. All these things were adding up on them, and they just keep battling back. It seemed like every third down, Jared Goff found somebody downfield. This game said so much about the Lions to me. And not just because of the standings. We knew what the ramifications were for the NFC North race, right? Like, you're going to go 2 games behind the Vikings. They're going to have a win in hand. This is not good for you if you're Detroit. It wasn't a must win, but you really kind of want to win this game if you want to win the NFC North. But more than the standings, I thought that this team faced so many moments in this game where I think most other teams in the NFL would have faded away. Oh, we're down 10-zip. Oh, we gave up a fumble return for a touchdown late. Oh, we're not going to get the ball back and drive all the way downfield. They just kept coming back. This offense is awesome. I think it's the best offense in the NFL. And this is just a big, big win for the Lions, aside from just what it meant to the NFC North. It's a big win for them saying, you know what? We're one of the 2-3 best teams in football right now.
I hate when we sit here and say it's this quarterback versus this quarterback, because it's not. Like, quarterbacks take on defenses. We know that. But I was watching this thing thinking, man, if I'm about to get a generation of Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Justin Jefferson with some version of anything you can do, I can do better. Like, you want to talk about 2 guys that just came into this thing and said, you will not cover me. It was remarkable. And you're talking about 2 defenses that knew that that's what they had to take away, and neither one could. Both quarterbacks were really efficient. That's my sort of buzzword this year. Efficient with where they put the ball, efficient with how they place the ball, efficient with their passing numbers overall. Like, stats don't always tell the story. And in this game, they do. Like, Sam Darnold played well enough to beat a Super Bowl contending team. Jared Goff played well enough to beat a Super Bowl contending team. And I looked at both of this and thought, man, both teams took punches and both teams gave punches. They managed to lose momentum and regain momentum. Like, these are the things you want to see from teams that aren't just good, teams that are great. I walked away from this so impressed, and I really didn't care about the outcome. As a person that's not a fan of either team, I didn't care if the kick got made at the end at all. What I cared about was, man, we are seeing 2 teams that are showing you they're built for January football. That is such a huge part of this. And to watch the ability, particularly of Jared Goff, to carve up a defense that does confuse people, that sends pressure from everywhere, but also the willingness for Goff to take a sack. Like, when it wasn't there, he didn't force it. It's like, all right, we're taking the sack. We're going to live to see another play. This was brilliant football. It was a brilliant day for Jared Goff, and knowing exactly what he does, knowing exactly what they needed him to do, know exactly who he is as a player. Like, this team has become such the identity of Dan Campbell because they are all comfortable exactly with who they are, and it's fun to watch, man.
It's so much fun to watch. Again, it's because this offense, this Ben Johnson-led offense, their offensive coordinator, is just so one step ahead of everything. Even Brian Flores, who I think we'd both agree has been the best assistant coach in the NFL this year. Maybe Spagnuolo, maybe, there's other guys in the mix there, but he's obvious. Brian Flores is having a heck of a season, and Detroit had every answer. David Montgomery goes down with an injury in the first half. He came back. I was shocked he came back. Happy for him that knee injury wasn't serious, but they just had Jahmyr Gibbs running the ball. Jahmyr Gibbs had more than 100 yards rushing today. On top of Jared Goff having 280 passing and being almost perfect, he was 15 of his first 15. this is a championship offense. There's no question in my mind that you put this team in the playoffs, they're going to put up points against any defense. I think that's what today proved really more than anything is we could play the best defensive football and we're still going to rush for 100 and throw for almost 300 and it's on the road. We're going to put up 32 points. We're fine. It's when they need a play, like you said, Amon-Ra St. Brown was well covered on a lot of these catches. I think he had 8 catches. It seemed like a lot of them, he has a guy draped on his back and he still just comes down with the ball. He's so tough. This whole game, like you said, this whole game was just great execution on both sides. And like you said, this is really a high level football game.
8 catches on 8 targets.
Unbelievable. Wow. I didn't
8 catches on 8 targets.
8.
And then you think about the fact that Laporta only got 2 targets. Jamison Williams, remember a few weeks ago when people were saying, oh, Jamison's the real number 1 for this team. Like, that's died off. Everything's fine. Now, Jamison only got 1 target. So, to me, part of what makes the Lions so dangerous is they are still just chipping away at the iceberg of what they can actually be as an offense. And that's scary to think about. That, they didn't need the best of Laporta. They didn't need to get Jamison Williams worked into this game. They were able to just simply use what they knew and pound it into the ground over and over and over again. Part of this, the running backs, part of it, Amon-Ra. But, man, there is a brilliance to what they're doing offensively. I don't know how you stop it right now.
Real quick,
fact that they put 31 up on them.
Yeah. Really, really good. I'm not. Look, I kind of planted my flag on Jared Goff for MVP. I thought it just made
weird
sense
flag
to me.
Design. It's a lot of letters. Jared Goff. MVP. It's fine. Like there's a logo on it.
I'm not very artistic, but I'm not wrong, am I? Like I'm not just lapping myself. I'm taking a victory lap here because I really feel proud of the fact that he's in the mix here and he's moving up the odds at BetMGM and all that. I'm not wrong, right? Like if we were to take a vote today, I think Jared Goff would get some votes, wouldn't he?
Yeah. And by the way, I never know whether everybody calls it a teeter-totter or a seesaw, but the little thing that everybody sits on. The seesaw public opinion is now going so wildly to the Lions. I think it's one of the most interesting things we're about to see. They're about to become darlings. They were already sort of darlings, but now that we realize it's sustainable darlings, man, the Lion fandom is about to come out from everybody, and that plays into this. Like, MVP should not be a popularity contest. I understand that, but when you are on a brand that has become popular and people sort of fall in love with you, it just makes a difference. When you are likable, when your team is likable, you get more votes for these sorts of things, and that's what's happened to the Lions in front of our very eyes. Like, they've gone from being the team that nobody, like, I'm sitting at Buffalo Wild Wings today, Lions jerseys everywhere. Why? It's Connecticut. They're not usually Lions jersey everywhere, but there are now because they have become that team, and we're watching the transformation in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. I went to a haunted house last night in Colorado. I saw 3 people, different people, not in the same group. One was a Amon-Ra St. Brown jersey, a couple Lions hats. Like, yeah, they are right now. Did you go to the front
America's
or the
back of the line? Like when you go through the haunted house, are you in front of the line? I'll be the one that protects everybody going through. Or are you in back of the line?
Me, my group, my friends, they made me go first the second time, but they know. I'm too skeptical. Like I'm like looking around. I'm not the one going to get jump scared. I'm not going to be that guy.
I'd rather be at the front of the line than the back of the line because I don't like the thought that somebody's coming up behind me and it's just going to tickle up my back. I don't like the scary up the back. All right, scary. Speaking of scary things, can we end permanently the conversation of anything that's wrong with the Chiefs? Like if today your argument is, well, the Chiefs need to be aggressive at the trade deadline, shut up. Stop. I don't want to hear it anymore. Because Kansas City went in 28-18 was the final score of their win over San Francisco and what was supposed to be one of the big tests of the day. And here's the clue. It wasn't a test. For Kansas City, they made it look pretty easy because that defense absolutely there was nothing that the 49ers could get going. It put the offense in good positions. But also, Patrick Mahomes didn't have his best day. It wasn't it wasn't the usual Patrick Mahomes dominance, and they still beat one of the best teams in the NFL on the road by 10. Frank, I'm tired of trying to fix the Chiefs. They're not broken. It may not look the way people think it needs to look, but who cares? Because all they do is win.
It's so true. And I think we're still kind of wrapping our heads around the idea that this Chiefs team completely changed identities in the middle of their dynasty. This is a defensive team. It is 100% a defensive team with an all-world quarterback, of course. Patrick Mahomes is still a big part of this, but this isn't the 50 touchdowns, Patrick Mahomes, or we're going to outscore you, and we're going to hit a bunch of big plays with Tyreek Hill. We might give up 31, but we're going to score 38. This is a really, really, really good defensive team. Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, leads that. I thought that Steve had just a great game. Like he had Kyle Shanahan in a blender, to use that term, from the last game. I mean, he really outmaneuvered Kyle Shanahan in this game. Brock Purdy looked. It was his worst game of the year. But I mean, they're making every quarter.
I think it's his worst game.
It might be. It really might be. Like, he just looked bad. There's some bad turnovers in this game. I get San Francisco's got injuries. We'll get to them in a second. But this, to me, was about the greatness of the Chiefs defense. It has become that unit that they could just depend on week after week after week. And they're going to score points. Like, this isn't like a 2000 Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that would score, 8-9 points and just pray that the defense pitch a shutout. The Chiefs are going to score points, and now they got the defense that's going to hold a team like San Francisco down most of the game. They got the touchdown late that really didn't matter, but most of this game, they were really confused. They were really ineffective. They had a hard time getting anything going. I think at one point late in the first half, Brock Purdy was like 3 of 10 for 44 yards or something like that. It was just crazy how well this Chiefs defense played, especially on a road against a good, well-coached offense. I think that's a calling card for the Chiefs now, and it has been since the beginning of last year, that this is just a different team than the one we have our perception of with the Chiefs.
So Brock Purdy, I'm going to read you a quick stat line for both quarterbacks. Brock Purdy was 17 of 31 for 212 yards with a quarterback rating of 36.7, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That sounds disgusting. Patrick Mahomes was 16 of 27 for $154, no touchdowns, 2 picks, and a quarterback rating of 44.4.
Wow.
That is usually the sort of number that loses you a football game. Outside of tight ends, there was nothing working for the Chiefs, and their offense just doesn't look right. And it doesn't matter. Because you're right, they have become a defensive juggernaut, but they've also become the sort of team that is just, that frankly, they are what I talk about all the time. I love the TV show Chopped. I want my best coaches in the NFL. I want them to open a basket of ingredients and be like, all right, today I have Spam, pickle juice, and cupcakes, and I got to make you a 4-star meal. I'm going to do that. I want coaches to be able to do that. Not only do the coaches do that for the Chiefs do that. They open the basket of ingredients and they're like, here's what we got. We're going to beat you with it. And they beat San Francisco so soundly. I know this game was 14-12 late, and you can tell me that this game was close. It was not close. It was never in doubt. As I'm watching it, there was never a time where I thought, you know what, San Francisco is going to get right. They're going to get this thing. The defense is playing so locked down. Spags is so creative with where he sends things from and who he drops into coverage. Like, there were a couple of times that Brock Purdy, I don't know where he was throwing the football. I don't know what he saw. But also, part of that is that Kansas City makes you rethink everything you're doing. So this Chiefs team, it alarms me. And we've done it. We've done it on this show. And ESPN does it. Fox Sports does it. Everybody does it. All anybody wants to talk about is how broken the Chiefs are. How can you be broken when your quarterback can have this game and you are undefeated still? Like, this is... I don't know how you beat Kansas. I'm not sure if this is good or bad for the NFL. I legitimately, if you came to me today and said, pick any team in the league for one game, you got one game neutral site, you got to bet your house, you can pick whatever team you want right now. There is not a single team in the NFL I would be comfortable picking to beat Kansas City because all they do is win.
It's incredible. It really is. And that stat line from Mahomes, you can tell the rush got to him. This is a really, really talented 49ers team. Like, again, we're going to talk about them in a second and where they are, but we know they got a ton of talent. The pass rush really got to Mahomes a few times, but even his stat line wasn't great. He made some plays. He made one big play, running play where he kind of faked going out of bounds and stayed in. But that stat line 3 years ago, the Chiefs get blown out. That stat line 2 years ago, maybe even, the Chiefs get blown out. Now they could say, Patrick, you can throw for $150 with a pass rating of 40, and we're still going to find a way to beat the San Francisco 49ers on the road. You're right. Like, at some point, it's like the whole NFL is just saying, how do we beat these guys? They've built that defense in such a quick amount of time that it really, really, it just makes it hard to figure out, okay, how do we slay this dragon? Because they're just going to get better and better, I think. I don't know how long they're going to go undefeated. They have a tough schedule coming up, so I don't think they're going to be in, chasing the 72 Dolphins or anything. But this is a really, really good football team. And like you said, if you had to pick somebody right now, why would you pick anybody but the Chiefs? Like, they just beat you in so many different ways. They've just, hats off to Andy Reid for being able to reinvent them as this dynasty has gone on.
A big game for George Kittle. We expected that. The Chiefs defense susceptible to tight ends, so he gets 6 catches for 92 yards. Not really a big game for anybody else. Brandon Ayuk with an injury at one point in this game too. Obviously, that's but also Ayuk up to that point was having a bad day. I just
dropped a big
it's
pass, set a tone for that
never
game,
want to I never want to point out a bad day on somebody that got hurt, but you're right. It was a big pass. It was a big drop. He had a couple of times and it just felt like he wasn't in it. There was something off with him all game.
We have to talk about the 49ers now. They're 3-4. And I can sit here and tell you like, oh, this game was fluky and that game was fluky. And they passed the eye test or whatever. At some point, you're 3-4. This is kind of who you are. And it's really not been that easy sailing for the 49ers. And, Kyle Shanahan comes out after the game and says that the team fears that Ayuk tore his ACL, which should obviously be a massive blow, even if he hasn't been playing well this year. Deebo Samuel leaves after a few snaps due to illness. He tried to play, couldn't, I guess. Christian McCaffrey obviously hasn't played all season. He's Christian McCaffrey. He's awesome. But we still, when a guy misses half a season, you don't just expect him to rush for $150 his first game back either. Like, just so many things are piling up on the 49ers right now. Where's your concern level at with this team? Like, is this a team where you're like, yeah, they're 3-4, but they're still going to win the NFC West. They're still going to be a team nobody wants to see in the playoffs? Or are you to the point of like, look, there's something seriously kind of spiraling away from the 49ers in this season they thought they were going to have?
My concern level is at a 10 for San Francisco at this point. And look, you got to be lucky and you got to be healthy. We all know that. The number of games lost to starters is a stat that they track every year. And you find usually the teams that go on a deep playoff run are at the most favorable end of that. San Francisco has no shot at being at the favorable end of that. On top of the fact that the expectation is what it is. Like, you think about what San Francisco is being judged by, just getting to the playoffs will be seen as a disaster for this team. Like, they are supposed to be in their Super Bowl window, and there's pressure to get it done right now with as much talent as they have. So on top of all of that, yes, their division doesn't really have a juggernaut that's separated, but the NFC looks really good. So if you're banking on, hey, we can spend plenty of time getting healthy and we'll sneak in with the wild card, I don't know. Even if we presume the NFC North is going to beat up on each other, I don't know, man. There's a lot of really good teams right now in the NFC that are head and shoulders above where San Francisco is, and they got to make up ground. So I feel like if they lose any traction in the NFC West, it's going to be difficult. Trying to make the playoffs as a wild card is going to be difficult. Trying to get healthy is going to be absolutely impossible this year. Trying to maximize what they have on the field with the health they have doesn't feel like what we expected. Like, I'm beyond concerned for the 49ers. I'm wondering when we finally just stick a fork in them and say they're done.
Yeah, I'm not there yet with them. I see this team and there's just so much talent. And when they're right, when they played Seattle first 3 quarters against Seattle, they looked really good. They looked like, okay, this team will win a Super Bowl. Well, then they come back and play like this against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are great. We know that. But the 49ers are supposed to be great too. And they just haven't shown that much this year. And a lot of that is the injuries. And yes, maybe they will get McCaffrey back. And Deebo Samuel's not going to miss every game due to an illness or anything. So they'll get healthier. They'll get better. But at some point, you already have 4 losses. Your chances of getting that number 1 seed in the NFC, unless you run the table somehow, which I don't think you're going to do, is pretty much gone already. And now you're looking at, okay, we're going to have to go to a Detroit in the divisional round, or we might have to go and face Tampa Bay even, like, who's really not a bad team right now. They've already won at Detroit. So my concern level is not 10, I wouldn't say, but it's, you're digging yourself a hole. It might be 7 or 8 at this point where you just like, you just might not be the team we thought you were going to be. And again, this Ayuk injury, if it is as bad as they fear and he's done for the season, well, that sets him way back. And it just seems like one of those bad luck seasons where everything's going wrong for them.
But that's why my concern is at a 10, is so much of it is bad luck. Like, I believe strongly in the football gods. And the football gods sit around a big conference room every Sunday morning in football god heaven, and they just look around and they say, what can we do that will absolutely create chaos? Now, sometimes the football gods shine the light on you, and sometimes they don't. I don't know what my beloved Raiders did to the football gods roughly 40 years ago, but I'd like to apologize on behalf of the entire team. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what the Jags did to the football gods, but, there are plenty of teams that can turn around. I know what the Patriots did. The football gods got tired of them not being thankful enough. So they were like, we're done. I believe that this year the football gods decide, like, it's like they decided to put salt in the shaker instead of, or sugar in the shaker instead of salt. Like, they're just sitting there, they're like, I'm going to just pour a little of that on San Francisco. I think the football gods are against the 49ers this year. And there's nothing you can do about the football gods. Like, they are undefeated.
It might be because this is just, it's getting out of control for them really quickly. And again, there's only one thing for the 49ers to do this year. Even going to a Super Bowl losing would be like, again, like there's only one place for the 49ers to go. And right now that they're not that team.
So let's get to another huge game today. And it wasn't a huge game because of the two teams that were involved in playoff standings, but it's a huge game because of what happened on the field. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the Cleveland Browns 21-14. For anyone that hasn't seen, Deshaun Watson suffered what looks like it could be an Achilles injury. He sort of planted his foot as he was stepping up, and you see that explosion on the back of the leg. It looked bad. He immediately went down. Should be noted that when he went down, the crowd started cheering loudly enough that it was awkward on the TV broadcast, to which Jameis Winston has a very viral clip going right now, essentially saying that that's not the right way to treat somebody that has given us all to the city. Myles Garrett also came out saying, quote, he's been a model citizen all through college and most of the pros.
God, Myles, what are you doing? Oh, so, my goodness. Go ahead.
And that's where this gets difficult. Y'all, like, we have to be genuine on this show. And so to be genuine about this, we have to address the fact that I will address the fact that I've been very hard for a very long time on Deshaun Watson, the human being. And I've always clarified that I'm having a conversation about football when we're having a conversation about football. And I think, Frank, I've tried to be really hard on him as a football player. But whenever we do that, I'm clear. Hey, I'm talking about the football player because I think I'm already on record speaking about the human being and everything that was. Look, I don't think it's ever right to boo somebody that goes down injured. I don't think that that's a good look on anybody. Taking the high road never hurt anybody. Being silent in that moment, even if you feel it, there are certain things you don't say out loud. I've made the joke for years, not that this is a joking situation, but I've made the joke that if the girl that you're in a relationship walks in and says, does this dress make me look fat? The best thing you can do if you think the answer is yes, is say it to yourself really loudly. The worst thing you can ever do is say it out loud. You have to read the room. When somebody is down on the field injured, that is never the right time to cheer. I don't care what we think of the human being. I don't care what, there's a place and time to do that. That being said, for Myles Garrett to say, quote, he's been a model citizen all through college and most of the pros is at the very least incorrect, at the very worst, ignorant, and at somewhere in the middle, inappropriate. Like there's a way to fight for your guy. Yeah, you're right. There's a way to fight for your guy. That wasn't it.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the stuff coming out, and even Jameis saying, "Oh, this guy's been going through hell for the last 4 years." Well, if you know that, Jameis, you also know the reason why. Like, I'd have a problem with Deshaun Watson becoming a sympathetic figure here. Just everybody knows the backstory. Everybody. Like, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, he got hurt, and that stinks for him, and it's crushing for him. We saw the tears in his eyes. He puts a towel over his face and all that. And, like in most other cases, I'd feel really bad for him, but you can go back and look at his history. Come on. Like, I'm not turning him into a sympathetic figure here. And I get his teammates trying to rally around him, but there's a way to do that without saying something like, he's been a model citizen all through college and the pros. No, Myles, he hasn't. Like, we all know Deshaun Watson's history here. That's why this makes this kind of story so complicated. It's made talking about it complicated, as we've talked about. Like, every time you've had a conversation about Deshaun Watson the last couple of years, it's like, I'm not vouching for him as a person, just a football player, whatever. Like, you always have to have that caveat. And that's what made even this moment so awkward for everybody. And no, I don't think fans should cheer anybody injured, of course. But, I'm also, there's a line between let's not cheer a guy who's injured and let's not turn Deshaun Watson into a sympathetic figure either. Like, it stinks for him. It's going to be a long road back. And now it gets very, very complicated for the Cleveland Browns going forward. Even more complicated than it was when I didn't think there was any chance of that. Like, this was the most complicated situation in the entire NFL. And then it got even more complicated with him going down with his Achilles.
One of the most difficult things in life to do, and something that, frankly, I do well, I'll be honest, is I separate emotion from so many things. And I'm not sure that's always healthy. Ask my therapist. But I'm particularly good usually at compartmentalizing emotion. And that's what I found myself doing when I saw Deshaun Watson go down. Because to be clear, I would never wish injury on anybody. That's not the way I'm wired. I never want somebody that's out there playing football to get hurt. I would never be okay with somebody cheering somebody that's injured. At the same time, I can say and will say loudly in front of a microphone and staring at a camera, my heart doesn't break for Deshaun Watson. It doesn't. Like, there's a spot where, okay, you're going to have to come back, and that stinks. That stinks. I'm not rooting for, your life to be ruined. I'm simply analyzing what's happening here without any emotion. Without any emotion, a starting quarterback in the NFL has gone down with what appears to be an Achilles injury, which raises a question of why so many quarterbacks right now are getting Achilles injuries. Like, the league needs to look into this. This is now becoming a pattern. It raises a question of what the Browns are going to do. And it brings to the forefront a very real conversation. Nothing to do with the injury, but a very real conversation here. Deshaun Watson has not necessarily been the type of person you can put on a billboard. Deshaun Watson has not been the type of quarterback you can build around to win Super Bowls. Deshaun Watson has not been the type of player you can rely on to win you football games. That's the person that got hurt today. So above and beyond everything else, if you're the Browns, you got to look at it and say, well, he's not a very good quarterback. He's not helping us win games. He's not the type of model citizen that we can put up on the billboards. Like, how we got here doesn't matter. We are here now. And if you're the Browns, you got to figure out what to do. I don't think there's an easy answer.
There's not. You can't cut him. The dead cap hit is 9 figures. Like, it would, I think it would almost double Russell Wilson or something like that, or somewhere like it's something crazy where it would just not only set the record for the highest dead cap number ever, but it would just blow it out of the water. It's almost, you'd have to cut some really good players to just cut Deshaun Watson
if
too.
If he is cut next season, if he's cut after the league year ends and he's cut next season with a post June 1st designation. So to be clear with everybody, that's where you're spreading some of the money over 2 years. The salary cap hit next year, if you were cut post June 1st, is $118,935,000.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
If you go to 2026, so I'm talking about another full year, it's still pre-June 1st, it's $99.8 million. Post-June 1st, it's $73 million. They have 2 more seasons of Deshaun on the books, no matter what. And their worst case scenario, Frank, is, as we've talked about before on other shows, he gets hurt, he decides he can't come back, he retires. Now everything hits the cap right now.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, yeah. What's the out? There's no exit ramp here for the Browns. It's tough. It is really, really tough for them. Nobody's trading for Deshaun Watson, obviously. Like, and now he's a quarterback who, okay, you've hurt yourself in mid to late October. It's usually an injury that's going to take about a year. I mean, are you even ready for week 1 next year? And what do? You can't go into a season with a quarterback making that much money as basically your backup. There's our backup. So how do you even navigate that? You go get a starter and you can't pay a starter and Deshaun Watson. Like, this is crazy to me how bad this gotten. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was their number 2 today. They made that switch from Jameis to him. A lot of people speculating it's because they're trying to trade Jameis, which does make some sense. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson is not an NFL-level quarterback. He's never shown that. He played poorly today. He played poorly last year. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe we wanted to trade Jameis, but we can't now because we need to just get through the rest of the season. Or you trade him anyway because you're 1-6. It doesn't matter. Like, everything about the Browns right now is a mess, and it just got so much messier today because not only do you have a guy who was a very ineffectual quarterback for 2+ seasons, now he's coming off a serious injury that's going to take away a lot of his mobility, which is one of the things that kind of kept him afloat a little bit as an NFL quarterback in the Browns years, and just he might not even be ready for the start of the season, and it's just so bad, Fitz. It just, if you're the Browns front office, you saw Deshaun Watson go down. You whatever you thought about him personally, at some point, very quickly, you started to do the math on what that meant, and it was, like this is even worse than we thought it could be, because it's an untenable situation. This is the worst contract in the NFL, and probably the worst contract in NFL history, and it's gonna drag the Browns down for a few more years now. It's just horrible for them.
The only real solution is to draft a quarterback. But if they but
this is not the year to do it either. Like,
we're already at that spot where, like, Tankathon, which is our favorite website for any team that sucks, tankathon.com gives you the current draft standings, and they have all the formulas. Cleveland would be number 2, which is, you're right. This is not the year to need a quarterback at number 2. Also, at number 2, you'd be taking a quarterback that's going to be expensive, even for a rookie quarterback. There's some expense to that. So now your salary cap number goes through the roof. Like, the best case scenario for the Browns is that Jameis Winston comes out and is very Sam Darnold-like. He looks, great, and he has great control of this offense, and all of a sudden he can come in and win a bunch of games, and they convince Jameis that, hey, let's just keep running this back. And Jameis, given the kind things he had to say about Deshaun, supporting him and how he wants to support Deshaun, Jameis decides he wants to play another year. They buy a little time. Like, that's their only home run scenario. But that's not like nobody's looking at Jameis saying that this is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, right? So this is a massive blow. And if they're going to go quarterback in the draft, man, that just is another layer of complication. And you're right. Yeah. I think the timing of this injury needs to be focused on, because best case scenario, he might be back at the beginning of next year, but he's going to have rust. More
it's
likely,
when Kirk Cousins got hurt, right? Like roughly when Kirk got hurt. So you can be back for week 1, but like we saw Kirk the first month. We saw him today. Like there's still rust there. Like he's not exactly all the way back every single game.
Kirk was playing lights out before he got hurt. Deshaun's been playing like garbage.
Right.
So like, what are you going to knock the rust off to get back to your level of trashy quarterback play? Like
it's bad. And I feel the people who I feel for so much are Browns fans, because they deserve so much better than this. They dealt with so many bad seasons of football, and really, really bad seasons of football when they were clearly tanking. They're just like, we're stripping it all down. We're going to win 3 games in 3 years, but we're going to have all these picks and all this cap space, and we're going to build up to this point where we're a championship contender. And then they threw it all away with the Deshaun Watson trade. One of the worst decisions in sports history that will bring them right back, honestly, right back down to the point of, all right, we're the Browns again of the Hugh Jackson era. We're just going to start the process again. Like that. That's no fun for anybody.
But that's the exact reason, though, Frank. I keep saying, as much as my phone was blowing up all last week with, are the Lions going to call the Raiders to trade for Max Crosby? I still maintain the Lions today should be calling the Cleveland Browns for Myles Garrett. My heart breaks for Myles Garrett. He's one of the best players in the league. He deserves to win, just like Max deserves to win, just like, Josh Hines-Allen deserves to win. You got good pass rushers on bad teams that deserve to win. My God, if you're Cleveland, you're looking around and say, well, if we're going to restart, let's at least trade one of the best players in the league for a bounty and try that restart the full way. And then give Myles Garrett the chance to go win a Super Bowl, which my guy deserves, right? Like, if I'm Cleveland today, I'm looking around saying, this was worse. Whatever we thought worst case scenario it was, this is worse. So now we got to veer our entire business plan. And if that means we're trading, that means we're trading.
Yeah, and you've already seen Amari Cooper go, and he scored today for the Bills, looked pretty good. Why not everybody? Real quick notes, I just want to get to other things in this game. Nick Chubb returned and scored a touchdown. If you want a feel-good story, that's awesome. Like, that was just so cool to see Nick Chubb just back on the field. He didn't have to score for it to be a great story, but he gets the touchdown. All of his teammates were celebrating with him. You could tell they showed, shots of the Cleveland fans, and they're just going crazy for him. Maybe one of the most likable players in sports, Nick Chubb. Came off, we all saw that injury. It was so bad. And for him to come back, tip of the cap. Great job for Nick Chubb. I'm happy to see him back. I know we haven't even talked about the Bengals, who they get a 100-yard kickoff return on the first play of the game, and then just kind of went away for like 2.5 quarters. They eventually got it right. They moved the ball in the second half. Some of that was just you just got the feeling like the Browns just gave up. Like, and I don't want to say they gave up, but you just feel beat down. Like, Dorian Thompson-Robinson's going to play. We're not winning this game. Like, it was one of those. So even the Bengals, I don't know what to make of the Bengals yet. They're 3-4, but their offense is now kind of MIA again. And once their defense is getting back a little bit, and I still don't know if this team can make a run. They're having a really, really weird season, but I guess it's better to win and be 3-4 than lose and be 2-5. So they're in a position where they can make a run. I just don't know if this Bengals team can.
They can make a run. I don't think the way they look right now, they will make a run. And that's a big difference. We're going to run through a bunch of games from Sunday. We'll do it when we come back. All right, Frank, we got the revenge game. Saquon comes back 176 rushing yards and a touchdown, and just the biggest up yours. I mean, it felt from the outside. Philly wins 28-3 in a game that wasn't even that close. And I mean, this was absolute sheer domination. And I just kept thinking about Hard Knocks. How many people in that building spent the whole time thinking about Hard Knocks, where the ownership made it clear they wanted to keep Saquon? I just feel like a bunch of people got fired based on what we saw in that game.
I mean, Joe Shane, their general manager, who, famously was talking to John Mara, and Mara's like, you know what? I'm not going to sleep well at night if he goes to the Eagles. Well, and this is a worst case scenario, because not only does he go to the Eagles, his first game back, like you said, he just has a monster game. The Giants look absolutely terrible. Like, I don't have any stats to back this up, but I think Daniel Jones got sacked like 96 times in this game. Because every time I looked up at that game, Daniel Jones was getting sacked. It was like, come on, guys. Like, this is ridiculous. And you just feel like there was any hope for the Giants to be decent this year. It just went out the window on Sunday. It's so demoralizing that you scored 3 points at home. You had Saquon Barkley come back at your stadium and just run all over you. This was a bad moment for Daniel Jones. They did put in Drew Lock late in the game, and Brian Dable immediately said, no, Daniel's my starter next week. But now that that box has been opened, how long is it really? Like until you're just like now that it's even been Daniel Jones' fault. I think he's played competently this season, but at some point when you're as bad as the Giants are, you're just going to try anything, and that probably at some point involves Drew Lock getting a start. Good win for Philly. They finally look good in this game. Still not great. There were moments, especially in the first half, where you're like, this offense still is kind of disjointed, but they got it going. I thought this was a good step forward for Philly and kind of the end of the Giants season, where you're just like, okay, we can cross them off the list. They're just a bad football team.
I keep thinking about people asking, what are the Giants going to do with Daniel Jones, and thinking, man, does Daniel Jones want to go somewhere else? I would. At this point, if I'm Daniel Jones, get me anywhere else. To play anywhere else other than London. London saw the Jags beat New England 32-16 in a game that, if they're trying to grow football, probably didn't help with that very much. The Jags ran the ball 19 consecutive plays in the second half, but Drake May had some moments in this one. This was a little bit of what we expected. Like, this was sort of an ugly game at the very beginning. But look, New England's not going to be very good. The Jags got to win, so Doug Peterson gets to take the flight home. I still don't think the Jags are any good, and I still think Drake May is going to have some up and down this year. Didn't change my mind on anything.
The only thing I took from this game was Drake May. Really, I thought he looked good. We'll get to the Panthers in a second. When I'm watching Drake May with this Patriots team, I'm saying they're not good, but they're not the worst team in football with that guy playing quarterback. He makes plays. He looks good. He made some great throws in this game. I think the Patriots have to be demoralized a little bit because they're just losing every week. That stinks. They've lost every week since week 1. But in secret, in private times, on a flight home from London, they're probably looking at each other saying, we got something with this kid. Like, Drake May is going to be a good one. Now, Jared Mayo wasn't happy after the game. He called his team soft, which when the other team runs 19 straight times on you, that's probably fair. You probably are a little soft. So the Patriots are not a fun football team to watch this season. They're not a good football team by any means. But Drake May gives them a little something for the rest of the year. They're gonna beat a team or two they have no business beating because Drake May's going to make enough plays to do that.
You mentioned Carolina. Let's just get to them now. Washington beats Carolina 40-7.
Oh my God!
Significant here, though. Jaden Daniels takes a rib injury, leaves, and I think everybody collectively held their breath. Like, this game was so out of control that they were able to play without Jaden Daniels, and it wasn't a big deal. But man, I think we all just looked at Jaden and said, most important in this thing is just don't get hurt. Like, the way he's playing right now, we want him on the field.
Hopefully this isn't that bad of an injury. He came off for the second half. He's given a thumbs up. I think his mom tweeted, like, he's fine. Like, so hopefully this was just Dan Quinn being smart and saying, I could go get Mark Rippon out of retirement and we could beat this Panthers team. We don't need to worry about Jaden Daniels in this one. Take the day off, kid. Marcus Mariota is going to be good enough to beat this double-A, like Carolina Panthers minor league defense. I get the Panthers have had a lot of injuries on defense. That's not fun to deal with. But when Jaden Daniels has 6 passing yards in the game, he broke a big run too, but he had 6 passing yards in this game, and Washington still put up 40 points on you. Like, you are not a professional football outfit right now. You are an embarrassment. Like, that defense is awful. It's trending to be all-time awful. Again, I think I said this last week. If you have any fantasy players on the end of your bench and you see they're playing Carolina, get them in the lineup because they could get a touchdown in that game. They could go for 100 yards because this Panthers defense is just awful. Like, it's terribly awful. The Commanders continue to roll. They're a pretty good football team. I don't think you take anything out of this game because you played the worst team in football, but I think it's just it's good to beat the heck out of a bad team. Like, that is a sign of a good team, and the Commanders did that today, even without Jaden Daniels. Now we just hope Jaden Daniels is okay going forward.
I just love that Carolina got Andy Dalton by Marcus Mariota, who came in and was 18-23 for 205 yards with a quarterback passer rating of 132.8. Let that sink in.
By the way, at what point do you go back to Bryce? Like, we need to have this conversation because 7 points and that was a garbage touchdown in the fourth quarter. Right now? Yeah.
I mean, it's not doing you any good. You got to figure out if you're in the quarterback market next year.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to figure that out.
They're trying to time this because they don't want to go back. Like, we're going back to Bryce Young. That's it for the rest of the season. If you bench him again for Andy Dalton at Thanksgiving, that's like, oh, that'd be so terrible. So they want to time this thing right. But you're probably right. Like, what's the point? You're getting your teeth kicked in either way. You might as well see what you got in Bryce. Yeah,
and as it stands right now, Carolina would have the 3rd overall pick in the draft.
No, they will end up lower than 3. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
like they are.
It feels like it.
If you compare even the Browns to them, like the Browns, the Patriots, whatever. When I watch teams like that, I'm like, this is a really bad football team. And then I watch the Panthers, and I'm like, that is the worst team of football. And it's honestly one of the worst football teams I've ever seen. Like, it really is. Like, if you take this stretch, and you've talked about this, like this kind of 2-3 year stretch. It compares to the Hugh Jackson Browns, and it compares to the 0-16 Lions, and any worst stretch in NFL history you can give me, and I've been watching this game a long time. This Panthers team just as bad. Like, what do they do well as a football team? And the answer is absolutely nothing.
Well, I will give you one more team that does absolutely nothing well. Maybe a little bit. My beloved Raiders. I'm done. Like, stick fork in them. We know they're done. They lose 20-15 to the Rams in a game where Aiden O'Connell injures his thumb early on. Gardner Minshew comes in. Gardner has 3 interceptions that were just awful. Brock Bowers continues to set records. Brock Bowers is a superstar. But I really watched this thing, and I kept thinking about the Rams. The Raiders, between penalties and turnovers, didn't belong in this game. The Rams got a tough win out of this, 20-15. Cooper Kupp misses this as his 4th straight game. And as a result, like, the Rams weren't even trying to throw the football for the most part. They just didn't. That wasn't part of the game plan. Both teams were just trying to run it and hope to God they could get something done. You've advocated before that maybe Cooper Kupp should be on the trade block. I don't know if I'm the Rams right now. I know I'm not very good. I know I'm not very good, and I know that this is going to be a bit of a rebuild. Am I calling around? Am I taking offers?
I don't know. Again, it's just so hard for me to imagine Cooper Kupp on another team. I think it'd be prudent for them in some ways, but he's meant so much to that franchise and so much to Sean McVay that it would be a little jarring. But now, you win this game, you talk yourself into being good, right? Like, oh, we beat the 49ers, remember? We took the Lions overtime, and maybe when we get Kupp and Nakua back, we could be... So I think they're going to talk themselves into, hey, the NFC North is going to beat each other up for these wild card spots, and maybe we can sneak in the back door and get in the playoffs. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Raiders, one thing I have to talk about, and we've talked about Antonio Pearson as in-game management before. They're down 20-12 with about 3 minutes left, a little bit less than 3 minutes left. And it's 4th and goal to 4. And they get a false start. And so they go back to 9. And Antonio Pearson's a field goal team out. You go from needing a touchdown to needing a touchdown. And it just blows my mind. Yes, your odds of getting it from the 9-yard line are not good. I get that. It's a lot longer odds. Driving 89 yards in the last minute 30 with no timeouts, which was their situation when they got the ball back. So Antonio Pearson continues to get wrong these kind of in-game management things that you need to get right. And again, I know 4th and goal to 9 is not a high percentage play, but it's better than what he dealt them afterwards. So that was disappointing to me. And we were talking off air about, they didn't even use the timeouts right. Like, it's 2:34 left in the game or whatever, and the Rams run the ball as they should. And then the Raiders let it bleed all the way down to the 2-minute warning and then start taking timeouts. Like, even that, you're like, I'll make the old joke, get the 12-year-old kid who plays Madden all day. He could do this for you. It just, at some point, Antonio.
They said on the broadcast, they said there is a clock management guy with the team. I'm like, he should be fired. Just fire him. And look, you're not wrong. At this point, this has quickly become one of the worst Raiders teams I can remember watching.
They're really kind of unlikable, right? Other than Bowers is awesome, by the way. Bowers is awesome. Max is obviously awesome, but Bowers has been a revelation. Bowers is really, really good. He might be one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends in football. Like, I don't think he's ahead of Kittle yet or Kelsey, given his legacy, but so I can't call him the best tight end in football yet, but he's going to be the best tight end in football, and it's not going to take that long until he gets there.
Yeah, the problem is the rest of the team can't do anything. I'll tell you, Frank, you know how jaded I am at this point. Like, it didn't even hurt. I didn't even yell at the TV. I was like, yeah, we suck.
Yeah,
and it's interesting.
At that point,
for anyone that hasn't paid a lot of attention, there's a new owner in the building. And whatever existed before the new owner came in the building, I don't know, man. I could see Tom Brady turning around saying, we're making some changes around here. I don't know, but we'll see. I never root for anyone to get fired. I thought AP had the pulse of this locker room. But, man, if I'm Tom Brady, I'm looking around saying, as a 5% owner of this team, I understand what works and this does not work. We'll keep working through the rest of the Sunday action. We're going to take a quick break. Got a bunch of games to get through. We'll do it next. Frank, I've talked about things I didn't learn. There's one game. There's one game that had me step back and say, holy cow. Wow, I think we can make a definitive statement today. Seattle went in and they Seattle thumped Atlanta 34-14. And I've been waiting for a moment. I feel like every week I'm like, just give me something, Seattle, that I can turn around and say, this is the building block, man. Felt like it. Kenneth Walker III was absolutely delightful. Seattle's offense was everything we think it can be. This was a thorough butt kicking of a good team, and it made me see Seattle just a little differently. Yeah.
Why didn't I draft Kenneth Walker on more of my fantasy teams? Because he's awesome. He's been awesome since he got in the NFL. He's been awesome since Michigan State. Like, he is a certified baller. this offense was really good. The defense, now that they're healthy, they played better. And now, you're doing this week by week because we've talked about every NFL team has 17 one-game seasons, and we overreact to all of them because of it. Like, it's every game's a referendum. And so you're like, oh, the 3-0 Seahawks, they're good, and they lose 3 in a row, and you're like, oh, they're frauds because they didn't beat anybody. But now they get to this game, go on the road and beat a, I guess, good Falcons team, and you're like, oh yeah, half of their defense was hurt for that 3-game losing streak. So now you're back. Like, I'm back. I'm like, oh, the Seahawks might be good. This was an impressive win. Look, the Falcons are paper tigers in a lot of ways. They had so many lucky wins early on, and then they beat the Panthers, which means nothing. So I've always been a little side eye to the Falcons. They were exposed a little bit. They were exposed a little bit today. They're just not. And I tried to talking myself into, well, they got 4 wins and they're going to get better. Kirk's going to knock the rust off, and you have those wins banked, and you're going to end up being okay. I don't know that they're that good. There's just not, they're so underwhelming unless they're playing the Carolina Panthers that I don't know. I don't know where I stand on the Falcons, but I do know where I stand on the Seahawks now. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good going forward. And given the 49ers struggles and their injuries, I can't even put it past the Seahawks to steal the NFC West. They got to beat San Francisco at some point, or at least compete with them. But I can't rule out Seattle turning kind of building on this, like you said, and winning the division given all the 49ers issues.
I don't have much to say about the Bills taking down the Titans because Will Levis didn't play, so I don't know who to trash. But the Bills dominated Tennessee 34-10.
It took a while for that domination, though.
It took a minute.
I was like, keep looking. I'm like, are they going to pull this out eventually? What are we doing here, Buffalo? They did get it going. Amari Cooper had a good debut. If you're Amari Cooper, I mean, when he's traded on Tuesday, you're like, wait a second, I'm going from this offense to play with Josh Allen? Really? And I'm going from a team that's like going to probably pick top 5 of the draft to a team that can win a Super Bowl? Like, I'll sign up for this. I think we talked about Amari doesn't like cold weather. Amari would have gone to Antarctica to catch passes from Josh Allen and not whatever the Browns are putting out a quarterback these days. So I think that was a really, really shrewd move for the Bills. It filled the need for them. You could see that his role is going to continue to grow. He had a big role today, 5 days, after the trade. So I thought all was well by the end with the Bills. They gave us some nervous moments. The Titans are just a bad football team, so whatever.
Speaking of bad football teams, the Colts beat the Dolphins 16-10. I had predicted a big breakout game for Anthony Richardson after talking to him last week. Turns out he's still not a very accurate passer. He did run the football okay, but Huntley gets injured in this game, but it should be noted, I think the biggest takeaway is this. We started to hear reports that Tua may be able to return as early as next weekend. I will remind everybody, Tua is returning, and when he returns, it will be because his personal doctor, not just the team doctor, but his personal family doctors have cleared him. So for everybody that's going to yell and scream he shouldn't play football, we're not doctors. He's talked to his doctor, he's talked to his family, he's talked to his God. If he's talked to those people and they all say that he can continue playing, I'm not going to judge him. And if I'm the Dolphins, I'm turning around saying, glory be to, because I got to get him back on the field. It's the only way they stand a chance.
This team is unwatchable. They are so bad.
Awful.
I mean, you have Tyreek Hill, who arguably the best receiver on the planet, right? You have Jalen Waddle, who might be the best number 2 receiver in the NFL, or at least in the discussion. Today, they had a combined 2 catches for 19 yards. Like, this is just a broken team. Like, they're just praying for Tua to get back. But it's almost like you got to win some games for Tua to have something to come back to. I don't think they're that far behind where they can't get back in the race, but they've dug themselves a hole. This is just an ugly, ugly game. At least the Dolphins have the excuse. Like, our starting quarterback's hurt. He's in street clothes. The Colts are just hard to watch because Anthony Richardson he's not accurate enough to be an NFL quarterback right now. He's light years away from it. He was 10 of 24 today, and he's missing so many passes. And you're just like, he is not a functional passing NFL quarterback at this point. He had 14 rushing attempts, made a lot of plays on the ground that way, and that's great. That's part of his game. But the Colts have to be worried. Like, yes, we knew he was going to be a project. We knew he was going to have to develop, but to get from where Anthony Richardson is now to where he needs to be as a passer in the NFL, it's not this is going to happen by Christmas. Like, this is a multi-year thing, and the Colts have got to be like, do we really want to, like, this isn't how we want to live? Like, it's going to be hard. It is going to be hard to turn Anthony Richardson into, and I was high on him in the offseason because he played so great in that small sample as a rookie last year before he got hurt. But now I'm like, I just don't think he's accurate enough as an NFL quarterback you can't complete less than 50% of your passes in the NFL in 2024 and be a viable quarterback.
That's why the worst thing that happened for the Colts last year was Anthony Richardson's injury. because Anthony Richardson's injury lost development time, and that's the most important thing they need. I still think from the day he was drafted, he was 3 full seasons of work away from being a quality, effective starter. And now because of the loss to injury, they're not even through season 1. I think they have 2 more years of this before they actually get to whatever the best of Anthony Richardson can be. Speaking of inaccuracy, though, everybody's darling for the second time this year had a little bit of an issue as C.J. Stroud. Not the C.J. Stroud we're used to. The Packers win 24-22. Stroud under pressure on 48% of his dropbacks, threw for under 100 yards. He was in this game, let's just be honest, dreadful. I mean, it was bad. Jordan Love had a couple of picks, and every time Jordan Love throws a touchdown, I think, Frank was right. Every time he throws an interception, I'm like, I'm going to call Frank. I was right. I get like there's a little bit of inconsistency to Jordan Love, but man, this is the second time this year C.J. Stroud has taken on a good defense, and against a good defense, he's had some struggles. It's just it's not as pretty as we think it should be with the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching this game, and I knew the Packers defense was playing well. I didn't have any idea that C.J. Stroud only had 86 yards. I was like, wow, 86 for that guy? Like, great job by the Packers defense, but they still needed a late drive to win this game and pull it out. And Jordan Love got them down the field, got in position for Brandon McManus, who was just signed to hit a 45-yarder. He took the Lambeau leap. I like that. Big win for the Packers because it's one of those, you lose this game, you kind of drop back, you're 4-3, you're not feeling that great, but now you're 5-2. You're in the most competitive division in the NFL. You can't drop games at home to anybody, really, even a really, really good Texans team. So I just thought a nice win for the Packers. Their defense really showed out. And if it wasn't for the Vikings, basically, and also the Lions, we'd be talking a lot more about the Packers. Like, if the Packers played in the NFC West, they might run away with the NFC West. The third best team in the NFC North. Maybe fourth if you really, really like the Bears, which I don't think you should. But this was a good quality win for the Packers, especially because their defense really played well, and Jordan Love showed up when he had to on that final drive.
I say all the time, there's a difference between the conversation of are we a playoff team and are we a good team? And I would argue right now that clearly Minnesota, Green Bay, and the Lions have all clearly cemented they are good football teams.
Yes,
there's no matter how that plays out. We'll see what happens with Chicago. A doubleheader on Monday night. The Chargers at Arizona in a game that, thank God, is buried on ESPN Plus because I don't want to watch it. The Chargers defense is getting all sorts of praise, but I don't know, man. They haven't played anybody. The offenses they played have all sucked. So I'm actually interested to see I don't know what Arizona is anymore. I have no idea what the identity is. So I don't know what to make of this game. I just think it's going to be kind of ugly.
It should be ugly. I like Arizona, but I don't know why. Like, their offense has been so disappointing all year because trust me, I have fantasy teams to prove it. Kyler Murray was supposed to be like, hey, I'm going to get in a bunch of shootouts and I'm going to throw for 4,500 yards. I'm going to be awesome. And that has not happened. And Marvin Harrison has not been who I thought he'd be. And I can't keep waiting for it. Okay, this is the week. And I don't know if it will happen. So I'm taking Arizona just because I don't really have a lot of faith in the Chargers to do anything. I'm not very impressed with this team. It is a weird game and I'll watch, but yeah, neither of these teams are exactly must-see TV at this point.
The other game, though, is must-see TV. Baltimore at Tampa Bay. They may not even fly their defenses into this game because who needs them? But both of these offenses can absolutely, like, if you've got Baltimore or Tampa Bay sitting in your fantasy and you're looking at the projections, hammer the over. Like, because I just believe that there are going to be a ton of points in this. This is going to be a beautiful football game if you love points.
Really fun game. We talked about on Friday when I took my crazy upset pick of the week. I think the Buccaneers win this game. I really do. This Buccaneers team is good. Let's not forget they won at Detroit. They beat the heck out of the Commanders. Like, this is a team that we kind of been thrown off the scent because we overreacted to that game against the Broncos when they really, really laid an egg at home. But Broncos have a good defense. We've seen that. So I like the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers are a good football team. They're the best football team we're not talking about. Let's put it that way. I think that their team's better than them, obviously. The Ravens are a better football team than them, I think, overall. But in Tampa Bay on a Monday night, I think Tampa Bay comes out really fired up. I think they play really well in this game. And no disrespect to the Ravens, who I think are one of the 5 best teams in football, but I think is a great spot for Tampa. And I think after this game, we're going to start talking about how good the Buccaneers are.
The numbers are pretty interesting, too. Tampa's run defense hasn't been great, but they have been good against quality backs. What do they look like against Derrick Henry? Can anybody actually shut down Derrick Henry to see what happens if this offense becomes one-dimensional? I think it's one of the most interesting stories. I have Baltimore in this game, but if our picks so far this year are any indication, that means Bet big on Tampa because I'm just I'm getting killed. All right, Stone is killing it behind the scenes. We always appreciate his work, especially late on Sunday nights, to bring this show to you guys. Follow us on Twitter at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. We will be back Wednesday hanging out with Jory. Enjoy Monday night doubleheader, and thanks so much for giving us your time.